Hello everybody, it's GirlGotGame and welcome back to Gilded Shadows. Today we're starting Quill's sweet ending. So our girl Morgan is now confident, stubborn, and analytical. I changed a couple of things. I had her meet with Ruben this time around. I've also changed her hair color because I've learned some fun things that happen at the climax of this story if your hair is different. And I'm like, okay, I kind of just want to see it for myself, so... If we're following this guide correctly, we should be able to see that as well. But anyway, we're starting off on our first choice in Chapter 1, and we're going to start off confidently going downstairs on our own. Look at Morgan. It's so weird seeing her with that white hair for me. I got so used to it. But she looks cute with the dark brown. I made my way to the narrow stairs a few feet away, carefully starting down them. But I must have been more out of it than I realized. I was 2 steps down when my foot came down at an odd angle and slid off the edge of the step below me. Instincts kicked in as I toppled back with a strangled shriek, grabbing at the rail. Despite my efforts, I slipped down 2 steps, my hips slamming hard against the metal staircase. Ow! Pain jolted through my entire body as I clung there panting, eyes squeezed shut. There were rapid footsteps below me, then vibrations through the stairs. And we're already being yelled at. Great.
What are you doing?
I peeked at the man who was suddenly at my side. It was the first time I was getting a clear look at his face.
Are you hurt anywhere?
I don't think so. He wrapped an arm around me, helping me painfully to my feet.
You should have asked for help if you needed to get up. Unless your intent was to try to break a bone.
I wasn't... never mind. I'd let that one go. I was too tired to argue, and he wasn't wrong. That had been reckless.
Where are you going?
Toilet.
Next time, please call for help instead of doing it yourself.
He let out an annoyed huff and kept a steady grip on me as we shuffled down the rest of the stairs together. At the bottom, he eased his grip, but didn't let go. Alright, are we back? Yes, we're back. Okay. Especially after that attempt to fall down the stairs. Should have thought twice before trying that. Okay. Reuben Kellner's face came to mind, as it often does for our girl Morgan. I couldn't say I knew him, but he was someone I'd met, not some faceless authority. Did anyone else realize I was missing yet? Okay. If Mom had tried to call, she would be worried if I didn't respond. She would have let someone know. So did that mean people were looking for me by now? Ugh. Okay. I guess that's our first little change with her meeting with Ruben. Without almost falling and breaking my hip, I guess going downstairs. Yep. I moved that way, carefully starting down but keeping a firm grip on the railing as I took each step one at a time. Okay, there we go. We've had conversations. I distinctly recall a conversation about how odd it is to sleep next to a stranger, in fact.
I said a marginally coherent conversation.
My words were quite coherent at the time.
Your logic wasn't.
That's up for debate.
Sure. Anyway. Brunch requests.
I'm fine with anything. Alright. Ari, though. Oh yeah, right. So this time I didn't meet Jack. I ran into Ari instead. Just for funsies. And I guess this is what she has to think about our boy Ari. I thought it strange at the time. Almost miraculous. He showed up right as I needed help. And out of nowhere. But I was frazzled and, in the moment, just grateful. Looking back, it was obvious he was observing me. I didn't understand why he approached me one day, then waited until the next to grab me if their intent was to abduct me. Not unless they couldn't grab me without direct orders from elsewhere. Alright, Caleb mentioned the tower at one point. Was it possible he was referring to Core Solaris? Endgame's headquarters? If that was the case, I'd misunderstood the situation. They weren't kidnapping me, not in the way I'd assumed that day. They were apprehending me, as a rogue Esper. The difference might only be intent and legality, but it was enough. But why not just tell me that? There were other pursuers, though. Maybe they thought it best to give me no information than halfway explain it. If I'd been more upfront with Reuben when we talked, would it have prevented this? Or at least prevented me being chased and shot at? Now I didn't even know where I was, or how to get back home. If Ari and Caleb were with Endgame, how did they find me? Alright, there we go. Man, sorry, but her hair with this color shirt looks fantastic. Alright, what are we doing for this? So even though we're not cautious anymore, we're doing the cautious option. I hope you understand that I'm not trying to hide anything from you. It's just a little overwhelming. The last few days have been rough. And they're also a blur. Beyond remembering the parts where I was chased and shot at, some things are a bit fuzzy still. To have so many questions thrown at me right away is disconcerting. A lot of what happened, I'm still trying to work out for myself. I need to gather my thoughts a little before I answer.
I didn't mean to make you feel even more overwhelmed. It's obvious you've been through an ordeal. It's just that this city has substantial security protocols in place to protect its population. We get occasional stragglers who somehow slip past the checkpoints. Mostly espers, to be honest. But we can usually still track how they got in. The reverse net should prevent any knight from teleporting into the middle of the city without being detected. But it didn't stop you. That worries us. If there's a hole in our security, I need to be aware of it.
I'm not sure I can help you with that. Oh yeah, this should be different because she doesn't have the white hair, actually. I don't know even what a reverse cage is. I don't know a lot about espers in general. I awakened very recently.
You just awakened? At your age?
It's a long story.
I hope you're willing to give me at least some of the details of it.
Alright, is this music change? Music change. I just know I stumbled into that alley with my mind on fire and nose bleeding.
You were in bad shape when I found you. According to Ripley, the psi fatigue was not minor. I guess you wouldn't know how far you traveled.
No. But I was already in a lot of pain before I teleported. I was so exhausted it might not have taken much to push me over the edge. Not yet.
You said you came from New Albion.
Yes. I think we may have been in Sector 63 of Sosalis when we were first attacked. The incident where I first teleported. But I can't say where I went after that. I was acting purely on instinct. And I was running around for hours, so I could have covered a lot of ground on foot.
Still, Sosalis is far from here, so whether it was one trip or two, you came quite a long way. I guess the fact you're both F-class and a queen explains how you got through our reverse nuts. With that combination, you must have punched through them like they weren't even there. The two men that grabbed you, they didn't confirm they were with Endgame.
There we go. I'm not trying to avoid you because you're a neo-human, if that's what you think is happening.
Oh?
I didn't know why he sounded as if he didn't believe that. Though I suppose, given where I was from, perhaps it made sense after all. Quill, I feel bad that I've imposed on you. It can't be comfortable having some stranger suddenly living with you. And no offense, but I've never met a neo-human until now. I have no particular opinions on them, and I didn't even realize you were one until you mentioned it. I mean, you seem perfectly...
human.
That isn't the word I was thinking of, but I suppose it's one way of saying it. Okay, and now... we are not going to thank him. We're not going to start up the thank you train again. If you talk to Ripley before I meet her, please thank her for me. Especially if treating a human esper is outside her usual expertise. I appreciate not dying.
I'm not sure you were at risk of that. Though I suppose leaving you on the streets might have had negative consequences.
Given what I went through, dying definitely seemed like it might have been in my future without treatment. But I suppose I could be exaggerating how bad it was because it had been a rough day.
Anyway, I'm sure she'll be pleased to hear you're feeling better. I'll send her a quick message to let her know we'll be stopping by soon.
He drained his coffee and walked past me into the main area and toward his desk.
When you finish eating, you can leave your plates there. I'll clean up later.
Alright. And he went back to his desk, leaning over the desktop interface for a moment before sitting and starting to type. For a long moment, I watched the top of his head replaying our conversation. I suppose this meant he was satisfied with the answers he'd received. At least for now. We didn't cover everything. I had more questions for him, and I had no doubt he had more for me, but this was a lot to take in all at once. So I let the conversation rest as well. We could always talk later. Okay. Now we're going. Finding a way to contact them without Endgame knowing it's me. What were the options for a roundabout method like that? What about using an intermediary?
Of what kind? Relatives and family friends are likely being monitored as well.
Not yet. I was thinking about my mother's agent. I don't know him all that well, so I'm not sure he'll be monitored closely. And if we made it look like a business communication, then it might work? The struggle would be finding phrasing he would realize isn't a normal business query. Maybe a question about something in Mum's personal collection? She has a lot of paintings she's never put on exhibition, so we could ask about several of them, something the public wouldn't be aware of.
Paintings?
Yeah. Mum's an artist. Relatively well known.
Is it possible you're Teresa Leone's daughter?
Oh? You're familiar with Mum's work? There we go. No, wait, that wasn't the issue here. Quill, you could have told me my nanosystem was deliberately disconnected from everything. I've lost sleep over the possibility they had destroyed it permanently.
You could have told me it was a concern if you were that worried.
I didn't think about it.
Neither did I.
I didn't think about it because I had no reason to assume you'd know anything about my nanosystem. But you had to be aware I'd possess a functional system that was rendered non-functional here. How could you not suspect that would concern me?
Morgan, it may surprise you to learn that I am not accustomed to keeping concerns of people outside the city foremost in my mind. I have lived in exactly 2 places in my life, Erebos and here. Neither of them allows individual systems to be connected. Erebos has such a low nanite saturation it's barely an issue there. It does not occur to me to worry about whether a nanosystem is connected to anything, because I've never dealt with having to think about it. I suppose that yes, on some level I was aware that you had a connected system before coming here, but it wasn't something that held a prominent place in my thoughts. In fact, the foremost thing in my mind for you has always been your physical well-being. I don't go saving espers from New Albion every day, so you'll have to forgive me if there are a few gaps in the quality of care I offer.
Well. Immediately chagrined by his tone of voice, I kicked myself for phrasing that in such a defensive way. Sorry. I'm sorry, Quill. It's not your fault. It's just been one thing on top of many things stressing me out, so I was frustrated to learn I've been worrying over nothing.
There's no need to apologize for being frustrated, Morgan. The situation is a first for you as well, and I'm certain it's more stressful for you than it is for me, all things considered. I'll try to be a little more cognizant of...
No, it's not your fault, Quill. You can't think of everything, and I shouldn't take frustration out on you. It's not even a big deal. Being disconnected is probably the main reason I haven't been tracked down yet. I appreciate knowing about the situation here, though. One less thing to worry about now.
I suppose you're right.
But the nanosystem really isn't used for anything here? Okay. A little bit of a different convo there. It would be difficult, but no more than going back. The question was about if I wished to make myself an exile. It wasn't as if I couldn't pick up, rebuild, and move forward. Humans did it all the time. But in this case, I was turning my back on a lifetime of merits to push back against being forced into a mold I didn't want. It was essentially rebellion, against everything New Albion had fashioned me to be. But I'd been doing that in my own way all along, by concealing I was an Esper, by striving to get off this planet as quickly as I could. My uncertainty didn't come from that part, but from the possibility of tying myself to an unfamiliar city in a way that might prevent me from leaving for a long time. I knew little about this place beyond the few bits Quill had shared here and there. Alright. She's analyzing and things. Probably the analytical one? Yes. How much of the population here is made of Espers, then?
Oh, that. Well, they're not uncommon in general. I suppose it would be considered proportionally sizable, given how small the city is. But they're still a minority overall. Around 10% of the human population.
Okay, there we go. Actually, now that you mention it, I feel like I have done this with most places I visit. Just asking random factoids.
What a weird habit.
I could have far worse habits than this. Like snoring.
That does seem like a terrifying habit.
Doesn't it just, though? What in the world was this call about? His administrative responsibilities? If he was talking to a detective, he was involved in some sort of investigation. Interesting. I like that she's just squinting like, I felt a little bad about listening in, but it wasn't as if he relocated for the call. He had to be aware I could hear him. Have we done this? Yes. Okay, good. Cool. Hey, Locke. We're confident now, so you can come on in. Of course. Please come in. Hopefully he'll be back soon. He's already been gone close to an hour. I stepped back, opening the door further to allow Locke inside. I was still a little wary, but also felt it wasn't my place to deny one of Quill's visitors entry. And I had no reason to doubt he was who he claimed. There weren't many people with nefarious purposes that would even be aware I was here anyway. The ones that might hadn't proved themselves the sorts to knock and ask entry. Locke stepped inside, shrugging out of his jacket and laying it over his arm as he went through the kitchen and toward the sofa. I trailed behind him without speaking. Okay.
Thank you, Morgan. I apologize for showing up without warning. I didn't realize Quill would leave you alone.
It's not a problem, of course. As he set the jacket on the back of the sofa, he turned to smile at me again.
To be honest, I've been looking forward to talking with you a little. As I said, Quill has mentioned you a few times.
I didn't know that he told others about me.
He hasn't told many, I don't think. Just me, through my though my assistant was in the room when we had the conversation, so they heard about you too. Vale's also an Esper, though. They aren't a queen rank, of course, but they're still an F-class bishop.
Really? A bishop?
Surprised?
Well, a little. I've heard there are a lot of Espers in Nisa, but I wasn't sure if they were ranked or not.
Vale escaped detection most of their life and eventually made their way here after a bit of a rough patch. They have a lot of sympathy for what you've gone through.
Locke had taken a seat on the sofa and gestured for me to join him.
Vale is hoping to meet you sometime if you choose to stay in Nisa. There aren't a lot of humans in this sector, and few of them are Espers. They thought you might like someone to talk to, someone with a similar background. As similar as you can, perhaps hope to get anyway. And if you need it, they'd like to help you get adjusted.
I lowered my eyes, a slight frown crossing my face. Why was everyone here so eager to help me? Quill pulled me off the street and let me stay at his place. Ripley treated me without any questions. Now someone I'd never even met was offering their support because we had similar circumstances. I really didn't understand. Locke's smile softened when I looked up at him.
Only if you want, of course. And when you're ready.
I realized my expression must have been betraying some of what I was feeling. I'm sure it would be great to meet them sometime. My long-term plans are still a little foggy, but I'm staying for now anyway. I've been a little too distracted the last few days to think beyond now. But if I stay permanently, of course I'd like to meet them.
That's understandable. I think we all forget how overwhelming it can be to find yourself in a new place. Until you adjust, now is all you should be thinking about. Besides, I know Nisa is very different from Cisalis.
Oh? Have you ever been there?
I'm from there, like you. Born and raised.
Really?
I haven't even been there in years, though. I came to Nisa, around 12 years ago, after living in Aurelie for a while. But yeah, I was born there. I studied law in Cisalis for a long time. Was just about done when I lost my citizenship and had to leave.
Why? He held up a hand, wiggling his fingers before I could finish. My eyes were immediately drawn to the metal plating and blinking lights on his wrist. The biosynth threshold?
I passed it after one too many surgeries to replace the failing parts.
He leaned back, draping his arms over the back of the sofa.
It was the spinal surgery that pushed me over the edge. That one required a lot of work. My spine, some ribs, part of my pelvic ridge. The arms, of course. That happened at the same time as my spine. SABF is relentless.
SABF. I'd heard of that, but there was a treatment regimen that could cure... Oh. Locke had come here 12 years ago, and from what I remembered, the treatment had been approved 6 years ago. Locke must have realized my thought process. He gave me a smile that seemed only a little regretful.
When I was a kid, there was no way to treat it. We could slow it down some, but there's only so much nano treatments can do, if you can even afford them. Sometimes it's cheaper to replace a failing organ, atrophied muscles, or damaged nerves than to try to save them. Less painful in a lot of cases, too. It's ironic. I studied the biosynth laws at university. We had the disease under control back then, and the thought of someday finding myself subject to them was not even on the horizon.
I guess I know that feeling a little. I knew Esper regulations could come back to haunt me, but it's easy to put it out of your mind. Or maybe just necessary.
It is. I remember the exact moment I realized I was about to find myself reclassified as a cyber augment. The full legal implication hit me, and it was rough. I'd studied case law of people challenging the restrictions. I knew how those cases went. And suddenly I had to weigh fighting a few centuries of legal precedent or taking care of my health.
I wouldn't even know how to go about challenging Esper laws. It feels like the deck would be stacked against me. How do you fight centuries of precedent? Fight governments, fight Endgame. They don't even answer to any government. I know one spark is all it takes to ignite change, but being a spark sometimes takes a lot of time and resources, and you still risk losing everything.
Shitty feeling, isn't it? I knew I just didn't have the health or time to fight back. I had years of recovery ahead of me, getting that much of my body altered. My health was so bad, I just wanted to be somewhere I could recover in peace. Sometimes you choose what the more acceptable sacrifice is.
So how did you end up here in Nisa?
Well, I got the surgery because I was kind of dying and had little choice. But with that much of my body being replaced, I knew my recovery time would be extensive. Couldn't replace that much of my upper body without replacing half my lower body too, just to support the weight, especially given the condition I was in. I moved to Aurelie because their regulations on augments are considerably more friendly. I thought I'd recover first and then consider what to do. Talk about Nisa gets around in certain sub-communities there. Initially, I was taken aback by the very idea. And then I wanted to see it for myself. It was so different from what I imagined, and I got wrapped up in things here pretty fast. When I got here, the Central Committee couldn't even be called an official group. Things were disorganized, and somehow I just wanted to see it grow. They needed someone like me, and I don't know. You blink and 12 years have gone by. But that doesn't mean I don't understand a little of what you're feeling right now, too.
Well, Quill had also said that. I didn't know why, it just made me sad to think that. The fact so many others can understand is a testament to the unfairness of it all in a way. Biosynth laws, Esper regulations, and who knows what else. It's like everything on this side looks perfect at a glance, but in reality it's so far from it. Everyone knows it on some level, but it becomes real only when it affects us directly. It's scary, the grip old systems have on us, and how hard it is to question them. And now I'm here accepting everyone's kindness and not contributing anything.
First of all, no society is perfect. Even Nisa has its problems. Injustice is part of life. And second, for all that New Albion tries to make sure we had the mentality beaten into us, you don't have to earn every good thing that comes your way. Not all the time, anyway.
All I do lately is complain about how frustrating this is. I should be looking ahead already. Not burying myself in moving things around with my mind so I don't have to think about anything else. Somehow that made him laugh, and harder than I would have expected. There we go. Gotta skip ahead a little bit. I really liked that alternate conversation with Locke, all in all, though. It was neat learning more about his experience and how he came here and everything. It's a complicated situation on my end. I know many people here have complicated situations, but mine is maybe a little more complex. It's a bit bigger than what Nisa may be used to. I've been thinking a lot about what it would mean to start over here and how I can make it work. Some of what Quill told me about the research here is fascinating, and I can't deny maybe I'd be interested in taking part in that. But I think it's only fair to consider repercussions.
Morgan, no one here needs you to sacrifice for them. You should think of your own needs.
I'm not trying to sacrifice myself. I learned the hard way already. Running away can catch up to you in the worst ways sometimes. I don't want to make the same mistakes again. For my own sake, too. I have an entire list of questions to ask Quill. How do I find work or finish school? Secure a place to stay? What does relocating here under my circumstances really look like? I guess I'm waiting for the right time to ask.
Quill didn't explain any of that to you or get your intake forms done yet?
We haven't talked about it in depth. I mean, the way he came here was so different from how I showed up. I don't even know if he knows for sure what process I need. There we go. Interesting. I thought for sure he was going to tell her off for letting him in so easily, but it seems like we skipped past all of that. Going public, huh? The only potential benefits I could see to official status had to be economic, right? Like getting funding from the Aurelian government for public services and the like, if they weren't already. I wasn't sure what other benefits would come with it. Some political benefits as well, maybe. But it would also have drawbacks, right? Particularly for the population. Even if Aurelie is unaligned, as soon as they knew about Nisa, wouldn't the Triad try to enforce some kind of regulations on biosynths? Because surely any trade agreements would require adherence to treaties that regulate them.
Sager insists we could negotiate exceptions due to the importance of Nisa's research centers and their reliance on the neo-human population. Even Stratum's teams are predominantly neo-human, and Aurelie is already more relaxed on its augment laws.
But you'd have to prove the research itself is so valuable it wouldn't also need to be heavily restricted. The Triad loves its restrictions.
Some of the research Stratum is doing regarding array energy sources is groundbreaking, as well as much of what we've learned about the ruins in Amidrium. These are things that no one else has been able to study as in depth because of
the whole Psi situation.
Sager's banking on interest in the research being done here to protect the biosynth population.
That seems like substantial gamble.
It is.
And the Espers here?
Espers aren't as heavily focused on in any legal agreements across borders. It's just that the moment we step out of the shadows, Endgame is unlikely to have a problem forcing their way in.
And that'll be compounded by the fact that the moment we're on the map, there will be a surge of Espers trying to come here to get away from the regulations everywhere else.
Higher population means higher crime rates, including Esper crimes, which would just invite Endgame's involvement. The point is, there are a lot of considerations. A lot of things that would have to be planned out and infrastructure we just don't have right now because we haven't needed it. Regardless of Sager's thoughts, I think there are too many drawbacks, and it's unrealistic to think we have enough weight to negotiate with the Triad right now. They'll steamroll Aurelie and us in the process.
Which is why we have to shut it down at the committee level.
I've been working to ensure we have the votes, Quill. But you've been on the committee longer than anyone else. You know your voice has a lot of sway.
Oh? He'd been involved in the city's politics for that long? While editing and moonlighting as an author? That was so odd, and somehow felt so very appropriate for this place. Though it did seem like they were dealing with some heavy internal politics these days. Okay. What are we doing? Probably not affectionate. Yeah, we're doing analytical this time. What's he obligated to do? Oh, offering us a job. Okay, alright. You shouldn't feel obligated to do that.
Who says I do? I need an assistant, you need a job. This is a logical solution more than anything else.
I just said I have minimal experience with this kind of thing.
Minimal is better than none, so it's fine, isn't it? I'm sure you're capable of learning.
I know you're doing this just to help me.
No, I'm not, Morgan. I'm doing it to help me. Not everything I do is about you, I hope you realize.
Feels like I'm sapping an awful lot of your time and energy these days.
I said I've been wanting to hire someone, and now I've found someone conveniently nearby. It's your choice to not believe me and to force yourself to feel guilty over some perceived coercion. I have no idea why you're so intent on bearing so much weight and culpability over nothing. I chose to help you. I'm choosing to offer you this job. Is this some sort of bizarre brainwashing that New Albion does to you? Where you aren't allowed to accept kindness and you feel like you have to do everything alone or you're a drain on society?
Yes, that right there.
I swear Locke acted the same damn way when he came here. Take what's given to you freely and stop complaining about it.
I wasn't complaining.
Do you want the job or not, Morgan?
Fine. Yes, of course I want the job.
Then there's no problem, is there?
I guess not. Quill was so difficult sometimes. As grateful to him as I was, as much as I appreciated him, I didn't know how to handle his bizarre, altruistic pragmatism. Although, he had a point about feeling guilty for him helping me, and he was correct in that I'd taken nothing but what he had offered. I should just accept it and stop questioning it. Thank you. For everything, Quill.
You've thanked me 4 times already. At some point it should be enough, right?
I like that the count has changed, because we didn't choose to thank him 2 other times. It's only 4 this route. If I wasn't capable of being stubborn, I never would have ended up here in the first place. I did hide I was an Esper for most of my life, after all. Then when I was found out, I ran away. Dramatically. You have to let go of something, okay. The problem is that I don't like letting go. I want to make it work somehow. It's not even that I have these beautiful dreams I can't realize. I feel like there are options here that will let me do things I've always wanted to do. It's not as if I feel like I'll never be able to achieve what I wanted either.
Then what is it?
I just hate being forced to take a detour.
Ah, so it's spite. You're mad at the people who disrupted your life?
Something like that. It's the fact I didn't get a choice to come here and reevaluate my options. I had to. I mean, I like it here. Part of me finds it exciting. An adventure I didn't know was waiting.
But it doesn't get rid of the fact it was against your will.
Basically.
Well, it's not like I don't get it. Especially if you're a sore loser like me. But you just have to start looking at it as a win instead, right? You still thwarted all of them by coming here instead. So you didn't lose in the end.
I guess that's true too.
Morgan, there are times I see you and feel like you may need to hear this. Despite what happened, please don't hate who and what you are. Hate the people who force you to take this detour if you need to, but be glad you had the ability to end up where you did. I won't tell you to be grateful simply because it could have ended worse, but there are opportunities for you to be happy here. Maybe even happier than you would have been elsewhere. At least as happy.
Okay. There we go. Goodbye, Vic. Bleh. Ooh, we do actually get an affectionate option. Well, well, well. Lucky you, Quill. I didn't start out thinking about you snoring.
Then what did you start out thinking about that led to my imaginary snoring?
Well, if you must know. Of course. I'm sure it'll be nice to spend the evening outside tonight.
Then let's go.
And so we did. You talk like you've been here for a long time. Vale has hinted at it before, too.
I came here about 20 years ago.
You must have been pretty young when you arrived.
26. That's not particularly young.
Younger than I am now. At that age, most people on the day side are still living with their parents.
True. But neo-humans reach maturity at around 5 or 6 years old. We don't have an extended childhood like humans. That short maturity period creates a different dynamic. Humans spend over 2 decades reliant on their parents. We don't even spend one most of the time.
Okay, here we go. It just seems like it would have required such a complicated process to get myself here with unconscious intent. If I can do something like that unconsciously, then what can I do when I'm trying?
It's an exciting thought, isn't it? Even I want to know the answer to it.
I'm not sure I do. Besides, I've been trying to break down how it would even work. The more I try to break down the process, the more confusing it is.
It's always shocking what we can do in a burst of adrenaline. But it's true that the more you try to break down the steps, the harder it gets to repeat them. That's why learning to use your Psi properly is a form of control.
Whatever else happened that day, I'm certain I didn't see some sort of crystal clear future of a peaceful life in Nisa. But maybe you did. Maybe you saw the safety. I don't think I've had a proper argument with Quill, no. Not when he wasn't deliberately trying to be a brat. But I can imagine how it goes. He just stares at you menacingly. Though I admit the last time I tried to avoid a large crowd, that hadn't turned out well for me. At any rate, I was certain the mild stress I'd felt was nothing compared to Quill's current stress level. Maybe I could massage him? Okay, what am I doing? We're ignoring the commotion. Okay. Rory is still alive, by the way. I'm going to bonk that boy for the bad ending, possibly, just to see if anything changes, but right now he's still alive. As much as I hated to ignore them, I just couldn't force myself to approach. I just couldn't. I wasn't experiencing the familiar sense of intense dread, but that didn't mean what I was experiencing was pleasant. And I had learned this lesson already. Granted, the last time I tried to avoid a situation, it found me anyway, but that didn't mean I wasn't going to try. I wanted to be back before the votes were over anyway. Giving a quick both-ways glance at the curb, I made a dash across the street. It wasn't a crossing area, but I didn't care. My heart was pounding even harder by the time I reached the other side. I did my best to ignore that too. Now separated by the street, I came parallel to the commotion in front of the alley. I tried to keep my eyes straight ahead, though one hand found its way to my chest to the base of my throat as if I could rub away the fluttery lump there. Then I was past them and quickening my steps to get as far from them as I could. My HCD chimed, making me jump and causing me to almost drop the box of drinks I'd been carrying. For a moment I pressed a hand to my chest, willing my heart to slow down. It chimed a second time before I fumbled it out of my pocket to answer. Hello? I pressed it hard to my ear, trying to focus on Quill's voice on the other side.
Are you on your way back? Caught Vale a minute ago. They said you went for lunch.
Oh, I am, yes. Are the votes finished? There was a long pause.
Yes, they are. Is something wrong, Morgan?
I don't know.
What's going on? What happened?
A hint of worry edged its way into his voice, and I was instantly chagrined at overreacting. Nothing happened. Just... Look, we'll talk when I get back. I'm only a few minutes away. I'm okay, I promise. There was a brief silence before he spoke again.
All right. I'll see you then.
We hung up, and I hurried to make it back to the office as quick as possible. I hadn't meant to worry anyone, especially not Quill. Okay, so she missed out on Rory. I paused as I unpacked the drinks, thinking back to what had happened earlier. That anxious feeling from when I was outside hadn't faded yet, but it was better now that I was back at the office. I wonder what that was. It would be nice to talk to Vale about it a little. I wondered where they were. For the time being, I pushed it from my mind. I folded the carrying carton for the drinks and set it aside, making a mental note to take it out before I left. Pulling out my HCD, I opened the message center so I could at least send Vale a message that their coffee was here.
Blah!
Listen, as for what happened, it's nothing to get worked up about, okay? I was walking back to the office and got a strange feeling that I think was a psi reaction of some kind. I'm not certain what it was, but I did see a minor commotion in front of an alley ahead of me, so I skirted that and continued back. You called right around that time. That's it. No big deal. I had an unnerving sensation and avoided some people.
To be fair, Morgan, you're an Esper. A strange feeling for you may be more than a strange feeling. Working with Vale for a couple of years has taught me that.
I know. That's why I was noticeably thrown off by it, and why I avoided the only thing in my surroundings that seemed out of place. But also, it wasn't that significant an event either.
Still, though, a commotion in an alley near here. It turns out, weirdly, I may have some more info about it. That's why I wanted to talk to Quill.
What? How are you involved in this?
I have a few associates on the intake committee, and one of them, a friend of mine named Eretz, gave me a call a little while ago. As it happens, they found someone collapsed in an alley. Not in any registers here, so they think he's a new arrival. He was unconscious, had faded red hair. They thought he might be an Esper suffering from psi fatigue. They weren't sure what to do with him since there aren't many humans in this area. They had no idea where to take him. I was able to recommend Ripley's clinic because of you, Morgan. Anyway, I just thought it was a little strange, all things considered. So I wanted to tell you about it.
Huh. Another Esper collapsed in an alley. Wonder if that's a new trend around here.
Let's hope not. Faded red hair. There was no way. Right? But the feeling was back and tracing tingles along my spine.
They sent me an image of the guy. He looks like he's in pretty rough shape. I hope Ripley can help him out.
Can I see that photo?
Sure, if you want.
He frowned as he pulled out his HCD and started tapping on the screen.
Morgan.
Locke held up his device out for me to see the image he had pulled up. Prickles were racing through my body as I stared at that spill of faded red hair and the pale, gaunt, and unfortunately familiar face. I knew it. Somehow, I knew it.
What's wrong?
I have met him.
What?
We met the day before I was apprehended in Cisalis by what we're pretty sure was Endgame. His name is Rory. I think he's a rook, and that's all I know about him. We just had a couple of brief encounters.
He came to briefly at the clinic, but he didn't share anything significant. Just his name, which, yeah, is Rory from what Aerith said.
Morgan, what's that look for? What aren't you telling us?
It's kind of a complicated story, and I'm not sure where to start or how to explain it. But the fact I recognize him at all is enough to make me apprehensive.
So another rogue Esper that you know is in the city. How did he find you here?
You're just assuming he followed Morgan.
Awfully big coincidence if he didn't. And as you may be aware, your assistant is pretty fond of telling us all that there are no coincidences.
As much as I hate the thought of dragging anyone here into my mess. If I could be tracked, then wouldn't people with a little more skill than a lone rook have already done it? Unless this is just an indication of what's coming.
No one else is worried about being dragged into your mess, I hope you realize. I just don't want anyone to find you until you have ties with Nisa that aren't easily broken. Though I agree it's odd no one else has found you if this guy was able to do it. Also, what is this trend with people sneaking in and passing out in alleys?
I sincerely hope it's not the start of an actual trend. That would be disturbing.
I don't even want to think about how annoying it would be to set up some kind of alley cleanup crew that goes around checking for unconscious espers.
That would be an odd meeting topic. But as much as I hate to bring it up, there's something else. Aerith's had a specific reason he decided to let me know about this. Because trust me, he doesn't call me about every new person in Nisa.
You mean there's more?
Unfortunately, yes.
Locke leaned in closer with a quick glance around the room, as if checking if anyone was nearby or listening.
He has traces of Arensol in his system, Quill. Ripley noticed it right away, first scan.
I shot Quill a look. Arensol? What was that? Okay. I frowned at the floor as I listened to the others talk. Locke's acquaintance that had taken Rory to Ripley's place had showed up, along with his partner. I hadn't been expecting to share the details of how I arrived with so many people, some of whom I didn't know well, and two of whom were complete strangers. But there was a lot that was unusual about the situation. I was, for better or worse, involved, and in more than a tangential way if Rory had come here because of me. Okay. I stared down at my knees, still chewing the inside of my cheek. If Arcalium could only be found in the deposit under Nisa, and Arensol was made from Arcalium, Rory's exposure to Arensol must mean another deposit had been found somewhere else, or that Arensol had somehow found its way outside of Nisa. The research here wasn't public, though, so this meant someone had leaked not just knowledge of Arensol, but some of the material itself. And now other people were being exposed to it somehow with unpleasant results. Okay. So regardless how Rory was exposed, it suggests it might have been leaked to someone willing to take the risks Nisa isn't.
That's the logical conclusion.
But that sort of Esper research is banned everywhere. Maybe there are some colonies in the system that could get away with it, but here on Arcalis? Even the small amount of research you mentioned Nisa has done could run into red tape issues on the outside.
Which makes the possibility of someone else doing that kind of research on humans all the more concerning.
They were talking about illegal human experimentation on Espers. And if that hypothesis was true, it could mean Rory was a victim of it. Damn. Damn, Daniel. Definitely a weird hobby. Are you sure this man is trustworthy? Because conspiracy theorists are usually a bit...
I think he's trustworthy, yes. Do you really believe I'd have anything to do with someone who was just a conspiracy theorist?
I'd like to assume you wouldn't.
Because I wouldn't, Morgan. Not with what's at stake. I wouldn't trust someone who was spouting nonsense. But we're dealing with a lot of things that happen in the shadows or get swept under the rug. Sometimes, the conspiracy theorists are right.
I was trying to figure out what he was talking about, and then I'm like, oh, Reuben, right. Conspiracy theories were not my strong suit. I never gave much credence to them in the past, though you couldn't go without hearing the odd one or two. Especially not in my line of study, where they had a tendency to proliferate. But this was something else. Human experimentation. So what happens with him now? You said there were others like him who showed up here. What happened to them?
The ones that needed it got medical treatment and moved on with life. Most of them have no idea who was behind whatever program they got involved with. At best, we get a geographical location. We can hope Rory has more information than that. If not, we try to trace his path and find connecting points to other cases or victims we know of.
But first, he recovers. Whatever else is true, he's in terrible shape, and his health and well-being come first.
I'm in agreement there.
Okay. Any affection for this one? Nope, no affection. He seems reliable.
I wouldn't have recommended you talk to him if he wasn't.
It's a little strange, this odd understanding everyone has about Nisian citizens. They know I fled New Albion because I'm an Esper, that I'm some sort of rogue. I feel like this would horrify many people, but everyone here just takes it in stride. Things like verifying my education are essentially impossible, but he kinda shrugged it off.
Special considerations are a must for most of us. Half the population here doesn't even have a legal last name. I only picked one for myself when I decided to have my first novel published.
Oh? Now I was curious about where Lawrence came from. I would have to ask him sometime. I'm quite curious about this as well. Then again, knowing Quill, he looked up a list of surnames and picked one that sounded good. Accurate. Very accurate.
I'm glad the calls went well. I'm pleased to hear you feel you have opportunities here. At least that's what I think I'm hearing.
Yes, that is what you're hearing.
It's a relief.
You're relieved I have opportunities? Tired of having a flatmate already? I was joking when I said it, but I wouldn't have been surprised if he really was thinking ahead to my leaving him alone again.
You know, or should know, that's not it. It's just that you looked rather lost for a while. Not without reason, of course.
I felt lost for a while. I still have this worry that won't go away. That I'll get my heart set on another path only to lose it again.
Well, don't worry about it. Holding back won't get you anywhere. It doesn't get any of us anywhere. We have to move forward and hope for the best.
What sage advice?
All my advice is sage.
Sure, let's go with that. I believe you. Quill eventually came out to hand me a cup of tea and tell me I should go to bed. It had been a long day. He was right after all, but I was too keyed up to sleep. I knew he was probably tired though, so I went inside as soon as I finished my tea. I suspected that, with all the thoughts jumbling around in my head, it was going to be a long night. And sure enough, I laid there staring up at the ceiling for a long time after Quill had gone up to his bed. Morning was a very long time in coming.